episode of Crippled by Culture, where we talk about everything in life and related to the disabled and chronically ill community. My name is Sean Gold, and I'm an author, advocate, and nonverbal public speaker for the disabled community. To provide a quick visual description for accessibility, I'm a black man with a white trachectomy breathing tube in my neck, and I'm wearing an olive green shirt. The person off camera who you hear speaking for me, this video is a Zoom call with me and the person talking for me off camera, and my guest is in the other box next to it. Before we jump in, I want to give a quick shout out to Isabella Christine for being my voice transcriber for this episode. Thank you so much. Today, we're talking about the intersections of invisible disabilities and navigating from trauma to triumph. I'm really excited for this one. So let's get into it and meet today's awesome guest. Dr. Xenia Barnes is a motivational speaker, co-author of The Triumph in Trenches of Keynote Speaker and Social Behavior Scientist. As a passionate empowerment advocate, she inspires individuals and organizations to unlock their potential and to choose resilience. With a focus on transformational leadership and personal development, she delivers dynamic workshops and seminars designed to foster growth and ignite change. Dr. Barnes, thank you for being here today. How are you doing? Would you mind giving me a visual description of yourself, please?
Absolutely. My name is Dr. Xenia Barnes. I am a Black female. I have curly long hair. I am wearing a tangerine reddish shirt, and I have eyeglasses and an oxygen nasal in my nose.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for being here. First, do you identify with having a disability or chronic illness? If so, do you mind sharing what disabilities or chronic illnesses you have?
Absolutely. So I have multiple. I have visible and invisible disabilities. For my invisible disability, I battle with anxiety and depression, as well as lupus and an autoimmune disease called Sjogren's. I also have pulmonary fibrosis, which is a terminal lung disease where my lungs are hardening and I will need a double lung. And so that T is on the line of visible and invisible, because when I don't have my oxygen on, you cannot tell that I'm fully disabled. However, when I do have my oxygen on, you can tell that I'm battling some type of disability.
Thank you so much. How does your disability or disabilities affect your everyday life?
Oh, that's a great question. So it goes in multiple tiers from minor to granular, and that would be from some days it impacts my social and my emotional impact, in the sense of feeling isolated and or wanting to withdraw and not be around individuals. However, it also impacts my mobility, where because I am oxygen dependent, some days I do not have enough strength or breath to do much, which minimizes the amount of activities that I accomplish throughout the day.
Do you mind me asking how old you were when you first got diagnosed? And do you feel like there are other things going on that you feel are not diagnosed?
Um, that's a great question. I would say first, when I was diagnosed, which was recently, I was diagnosed in 2021. At the time, I was only 43, and so it's been a change and an adjustment. And then I would say I'm still finding things out within the realm of this identifying as being disabled, and each time I go to the doctor, it seems like there's something new that comes up. So that it's kind of difficult to answer that question, just because each day is different for me and I never know what's going to come up.
Okay, thank you very much. Did you have to go through your own internal albinism? How was that journey been like towards inner acceptance?
That has been a great eye opener. It was definitely a roller coaster of emotions. It was also I want to say it showed me so many different parts of myself, because in going through and trying to process everything, it also allowed me to realize there's a lot of individuals who are being diagnosed with different illnesses and feel like they lack a community of people who can understand. And thus that is what led me to becoming an author, because I began to journal down my experience. I'm just trying to make sense of what I was going through. And from that birthed a couple of self-help books that allows me to now be able to speak to others and help them learn how to navigate through the trenches of the unknown and the trenches of understanding things that we didn't plan for as it comes to being disabled, as it comes to navigating through the workforce, as it comes to re-identifying yourself and identifying what triumphs begin to look like for you once you go through a traumatic change like being diagnosed with a disability.
Okay, do you mind me asking you, what is your own personal take definition of a disability?
Sure. And so for me, my personal take is anything that inhabits you or creates challenges for you to be able to function. I don't want to say appropriately, but to function to the best of your ability and your capacity so that you can live a functionable life where you are not dependent on others. And for that, in the sense of myself, would be because I had to learn how to talk again. I had to learn how to stand on my own. I had to learn how to walk again. There were so many different things that we take for granted that I had to relearn when I was diagnosed and went through the challenges of those things being stripped away from me just due to strength and my capacity of being able to be mobile and move around. Um, those are the key components that helped me begin to process and understand what it was like to become being fully able to be on your own to now being disabled and being uh needing the support of others to manage.
Okay, what do you think that you've learned that stays with you on a daily basis from the disabled community or a specific disabled person?
I would say I've learned to take things one day at a time. I've learned to be willing to accept the help from others, as well as it's okay to need help. That was a big and major part for myself because going from someone who was completely independent, who then became dependent on others, that was such a hard pill to swallow, as well as just difficult to navigate for someone who's been so self sufficient for the majority of their life to then needing the help of so many others. I will also say that I've been able to look at the shift in my ability as acceptance as like, oh, somewhat of a superpower because I feel like I'm strengthened in other areas that I may have taken for granted or not paid much attention to. Now that I do need the assistance of others, so I am more patient now. I'm much more detail oriented now. There's so many different aspects that I'm able to train. I was able to transcend and translate into other areas of my life because I then had to depend on those strengths or which would have perceived to been weaknesses before are now strengths of mine.
That's such a beautiful thing. To jump back real quick, a couple steps, how long did it take you to relearn everything?
Whew, it took me a good, I want to say, year and a half, going on 2 years, and that was just because the capacity of everything. So I went from being, like I said, someone who was going to the gym 3 to 4 times a week, and like a school administrator, chasing after students, playing in the gym, just doing so many different things to, in the blink of an eye, I was unable to walk more than 5 steps without getting dizzy, without passing out, and without the assistance of someone else. I was no longer able to walk up 3 or 4 steps. And so my lung capacity rapidly decreased to 34% between both of my lungs to where I became oxygen dependent. And so with that, my weight declined, my health declined, my ability to sit up and even be able to breathe to say a complete sentence sentence declined. So that resulted in pulmonary therapy, that resulted in physical therapy, occupational therapy. So there was a lot of therapy that went into it, but then it was also a lot of allowing my body to rest. And one of the most important things I would be remiss if I didn't say was that battle with self of wanting to do the things that I could no longer do. I've spent more time hurting myself trying to be the old version of myself because I didn't understand what was happening to me. And I think many people, when they're diagnosed at such a later stage in their age, after being someone who was physically able to do so many things, they have that battle of what they used to do or used to be able to do. So they grapple and fight trying to still be that person as opposed to allowing their mental self and their physical self time to rest, to be able to adjust and learn the things that they need to learn, be able to have the strength to move forward.
Okay, so I have a couple questions that came to mind. What was your strength during this process? How did you find your strength to endure and keep pushing forward? And then how also has your perspective changed on what being a strong Black woman means?
Oh, those are two great questions. So first, I'm going to tackle the finding my strength and my resilience within that. Within the trying times, I always tell people that results back to my faith. I'm a big fan. My family is big on prayer. We're big on just a tribe and the dynamics of culture of leaning on each other. And so my family was very, very supportive and stayed close to me, taking turns supporting me, taking turns watching over me, helping me shower, feeding me, all those things. And being able to have their strength pour into me on the days where I felt like I didn't have strength because I literally didn't. Um, that helped me to want to fight more. I will also say my son. I have one child. He's 25 now. He was 21 at the time when I was diagnosed. And during that time, just seeing him just made me want to continue to fight because I knew that I couldn't just give up. It wasn't just me. I also had someone who still needed me and depended on me. So rooted me in my family, but it also just my education and my background in human behavior just helped me to be able to process better. Um, Tools that I used to also help me was journaling and writing, meditating, and those things helped me find peace and comfort along with prayer. I would say the other thing in terms of outside sources, it would just be knowing that there's something other than myself impactful and being able to share in my story to help others not want to give up when it's so easy to just say, you know what, I'm this fight is too hard. I'm just ready to give up. So being able to use my voice and my testimony to seeing where I was to where I am now allows me to find comfort and joy in the process, as well as being able to support others.
That's such a beautiful answer. I'm like lost for words. Um, I have another question if you don't mind. I don't want to get too much in your personal business, but how did you stay rooted in your faith during those times? How did you not get angry and question why me?
So I'm glad you asked that because I did do all those things. It is okay to be angry. It is okay. And I will say that as, and so usually when I introduce myself as Reverend Dr. Barnes. And I explain to people the Reverend is for me and the doctor is for everyone else. The Reverend is what kept me grounded while going through these darkest times. So there were nights when I was crying, bawling my eyes out with the covers over my head because I didn't want anyone else to see. Because I was, of course, trying to be that strong Black woman. I was, with all that strength. I don't want anyone else to see me cry. I want them to know that I'm okay. I have to be strong for everyone else. But because that's what we grow up believing. However, in the darkness at night, I would have the covers over my head and I'll be bawling and I'll be crying and I would be saying, like, how could this happen to me? as helpful as I am to others, how could this be going on to me? I do good, I do this, and I would just run down all the good things that I was doing in the world at the time, and I was just questioning like why? But then this calm actually came over me, and it was just a sense of recognizing that it was time for me to rest. And I had to realize, and I would say the biggest aha moment I had was when I actually died in my mother's kitchen, and EMS had to bring me back. And I got to the hospital. I was on the ventilator, and the doctors were telling my family, everyone, contact all your family, have everyone come in. We don't know if she's going to make it through the night. And that moment and seeing the tons of friends and family pour in and they're crying, and I just said, you know what, I don't know why this is happening, but clearly there's something that you need me to see. So I just prayed and I said, God, I want you to use me as your will and allow me to be a testament to others in your strength and your glory and your deliverance. And I just turned it over to him. I was like, I'm no longer going to fight against this. I'm gonna let you, this higher power, show me what it is that I need to be. And what I learned in that process was it was time for me to close one chapter of my life, because apparently I have done all that I needed to do in that chapter. And it was something else that he had present for me to do. And so that is what kept me rooted, because it brought me back to my faith. It brought me that connection of family. It brought me that connection of I have touched people and they are here, and this tribe is pouring in to give me strength to continue to fight. And so, in seeing that on those days that I was laying in the hospital, and from going from being on a ventilator to now, even now, being able to do this interview allows me to realize that there is a greater purpose. And so, I must stay rooted in my faith. I must continue to believe that there's something higher that has meaning on this life that allows us to do good even in the darkness. Because I was in the darkness for a long time when I was first diagnosed. But there's hope, and there's light as long as you're willing to open yourself up to receive it.
Whew, I have chills. Oh my goodness. That is a powerful testimony. I am so glad that God has brought you through and you are still continuing to endure and pushing forward through everything that you are going through. But is there anything particular that you're still healing from that you feel comfortable sharing?
I'm sure I would say, as much as I do this work and when I interact with others, I feel like I'm still healing from workplace trauma. And the reason why I bring that up is because I recognize in doing these interviews and in engaging with others in the disability and diversity community, I recognize that so many of us are being met with resistance when it comes to our need for reasonable accommodations in the workplace, when it comes for our need for adequate support, when it comes for our need for time off, when it comes for our needs to just even be the constant battle for us to get just the support or the time or the red tape that we have to go through when we're requesting time or leave because we are facing some type of mental health challenge or some type of physical challenge. Um, it stays at the forefront because I recognize it doesn't matter what field you are in. Once you're diagnosed with some type of illness, it's like you're put in this box of less than or other. And that's something that I recognize with being in this community, as I stated, as much as I do these interviews, that keeps coming up. It keeps coming up that we are constantly having to defend ourselves or make others feel good about challenges that we face so that they feel comfortable. And so that's what goes back and forth to me that I'm still healing from when I say the workplace trauma, because when I have these discussions, I'm also triggered or reminded how I was forced out of my role as a school administrator once I was diagnosed with my illness, because they didn't understand it. And then also I felt like I was just tossed aside because it was like I could no longer do what they wanted me to do in the vision and the perception of how they wanted the work to be done.
Do you find that that the disability is only hindering to you, or do you find it as a blessing in disguise in some type of way?
I feel that I don't want to say it hinders me, and I'm going to tell you why. I want to say it hinders me because, like I said, when that chapter closed as me being a school administrator, so many other doors open. So I was already doing public speaker, but I became more of a public speaker and an advocate for those who are living with disabilities. I've also became a policy a policy maker since then. I've became an author of multiple books since then. I've joined a community of advocates and individuals who are learning how to navigate through these spaces without diminishing themselves or allowing others to diminish themselves because of their abilities or what others see as inabilities. And I have redefined what resilience and what triumph looks like for me and for those who look like me and for those who I represent. And so I no longer look at it as a hindrance. I look at it, like I said, as a superpower. I look at it as a platform, a stepping stone that allows me to bring others up with me as opposed to people stuffing us inside this box and pushing us aside.
Has this disability given you a different outlook on life, given you a different perspective of a whole different community? And how do you feel about being in this community? Do you feel a newer sense of love and acceptance, or how do you just navigate that all around?
I would say because I have so many people in my family who have been living with and navigating with different levels of disabilities, mostly mental disabilities or other invisible disabilities, neurodivergent, and different things of that nature. I would say, I don't want to say I have a newfound respect because I have always had respect. However, I do have a different level of appreciation for the the patience, the empathy, as well as the strong community that is within the diversity community because that isn't highlighted enough. When people think of diversity and disability communities, they often look at, like I said, they look at the inability as opposed to the ability to gather, the ability to support, and the ability to advocate for themselves. And so that is what I am most proud of in being a part of this community because I get to see and highlight that every day. I get to be on podcasts like this. I get to interact with nonverbal and verbal individuals with different disabilities, as well as get to see their strength and their glory as they're navigating through their own challenges and as they are identifying what their triumphs look like. And those barriers of misconceptions are constantly being broken being within this community because I'm learning something new on a different level each day within this community. And I'm more appreciative of the day-to-day life and the day-to-day breath that we continue to breathe and fight. I'm happy to be here. Sean and I have been trying to connect for a while, but our schedules haven't been allowing us. But I'm happy that we were able to connect today because it just reminds me how finding self in the wake of adversity and in the wake of different things, um, challenges allows us to reshape the catalyst of self-discovery, which is so important for individuals like us. One of my books is called Grieving to Heal. And that was actually the first book that I began to write because I was grieving the old version of myself. And so when I do my talks, I often share the story of how I had to grieve the old version of myself so that I could step into this new version of myself. So I continue to push for others to understand that it's okay to grieve what was so that you can start to be open to what is and what is to come. Sometimes we hold so dear and hold on so tight to these ideas that we fought so long for titles and just different accolades and recognitions we fought so hard that we get married to those things. And then when those things are stripped away or those things are taken or we feel like we lose those things, we lose ourselves. But the important thing is understanding who you are and being able to identify who you are without naming a position, without naming something that is for someone else, but actually identifying you, what makes you happy, what makes you smile. Who are you outside of being something for someone else? And so that is a major step in identifying the triumph. And that's what I often challenge individuals with understanding who they are, identifying who they are, and understanding their why of fighting to continue to get up each day and do something different that makes them smile, love themselves a little more easily.
How do you feel about the Christian community or the church saying that our disabilities are not coming with us to heaven? Many disabled people, including myself, find that not to be true. I want to continue to have mine. How do you feel about it?
So I disagree with that. And that's just my personal opinion. I can't speak for everyone in the Christian community, but I do speak for I do want to speak for myself, and I want to. I believe that when we go, all parts of us come with us. And I don't think that you stop being who you are. Yeah. When you die, feel like who you are is who you are. I believe that yes, you may be going to a place where we would like to hope to think it's great and it's just blue skies and everything, and we reunite with our whole family. But I believe that I will hope that I don't lose all of me going to this new place that other people or someone else's perspective of what they have. I believe that I have been carefully crafted by God. I have been designed in His view and in His light of what He wanted for me and what He expected for me. And I believe that when it is my time, I believe that He's going to bring me to Him or to His home in the manner of which He crafted me. So the sense of your disability doesn't go with you or your ability doesn't go with you. I disagree with that because I believe that um, we're all crafted by design by a higher power. And why craft us that way if it's just going to be stripped away in the next life? But that, again, that's my personal opinion.
So, going back to you talking about your book, Triumph in the Trenches, how did you get involved as a co author?
So, I met the publisher on LinkedIn randomly on LinkedIn. She was like, I read your bio. I think that you would be great. I'm putting together anthology of a bunch of different professionals from different backgrounds, professional backgrounds, and I would like it if you come to this call that I'm gonna have via Zoom and just get to hear about what the anthology is gonna be about. And so I said, okay, no problem. I joined the call, and it was a call of the first book was a call of 22 different professionals from across the globe. So we had people from Switzerland, we had people from Uganda, like it was people from all over on the call. And just to think that as we continue to talk with all the different backgrounds from educators to professors to lawyers, C suite members, just everywhere, everyone was having similar challenges in the workforce. And so that's how we came about with Triumph in the Trenches, because each chapter, although they were unique to themselves, they all had this common thread of workplace trauma and psychological safety. And so that's what Triumph in the Trenches became about. It became the green book for Black professionals navigating through success. What does it look like for Black professionals to be in these spaces who are often met with workplace bullying, they're met with mobbing, they're met with their disabilities being challenged, they're met with all these different things, and to recognize we need to have something so those that coming up behind us don't have to suffer the problems that we suffered. So that's why it's considered the green book for navigating navigating professions for navigating success for Black professionals. And in Triumph and the Trenches Volume 2, we just built upon that. So some of those authors, but a couple of new authors joined in. And in my chapter, I speak about the bureaucracy and the minefield of navigating the workforce as someone who is disabled and also as other individuals who suffer from invisible disabilities, which has become a rising thing within after COVID. We begin to see so many challenges for those who are needing more time for mental health, and so many challenges for those for Black women, especially right now in this time. As you can see, over 300,000 Black women was just lost their job within the last 6 months. So, what does that look like for those women who are not only Black professionals, but also the ones who are battling domestic violence, the ones who are battling mental illness, the ones who are battling um, long-term illnesses and the things of that nature? What does that look like for them? What does it look like to now have to start over when many of them were at the height of their success?
Can you tell all of us where we can buy your book and on what platforms as well?
Absolutely. So all my books are available on Amazon as well as my website, which is www.rdbspeaks.com. And again, that's on Amazon, my website, as well as Barnes and Nobles. But I tend to push people to my website just because when you order from my website, you can get an autographed copy from me. If you order it from Amazon, you'll just get the actual book. But if you order it from my website, I like to send a note to each reader who purchased the books.
That's wonderful. Jumping back into your book and going out and doing public speaking, how does your book coexist with that?
So my book coexists with that because again, I love to share a part of me when I do my public speaking because I definitely feel that it's more authentic and the audience find me more relatable when I share pieces of myself. Now I don't share my entire self, but I do share pieces of myself just so that individuals know that this is when I'm speaking is not just textbook. I speak from, yes, I speak from research, I speak from textbook, but I mostly speak from real life experience. And individuals connect better when they can recognize that someone has walked a path that they have walked. They're more open to receiving a message and trying different strategies when they know that they actually work. And so any strategy or tool that I offer, I know it works because it's something that I've been through myself or it's something that I've coached others through. And so that's why I tie all those things into my book. So each book that I have always has a framework that's connected to whatever talk that I give that also has real immediate tools and call to actions that allows the individual to stay engaged but also see the success as long as they stay the path and do the work.
What was the hardest story you decided to share, or the hardest part of your life you decided to share in the portion of your book?
Whoa, that's a great question. And I love when people ask me that questions. I would say the hardest part for me to share was the grief and loss of my nephew to gun violence, my only nephew to gun violence. And that the reason why that would I would say would be the hardest part because it's the most vulnerable part because I had to share pieces of myself that I was still trying to understand. When you lose someone, especially someone who is so close to you, and I have to go back because I have two sisters, there's three of us, and we all have one child, and we raise them like brothers and sisters. So my nephew was my oldest sister's son, who was the oldest of the nieces and nephews. We all had our kids like staggered and style. So my oldest sister had my nephew, my middle sister had the niece, and I, the baby, has the baby, my son. And so when we lost my nephew Melquan, it shook my entire family to the core to where we were all having mental breakdowns simultaneously, but we didn't even recognize that was happening because we were so busy trying to support my oldest sister, which was his mother, because she tried to commit suicide 3 times after losing my nephew. And so we were so focused on that that we didn't even recognize that we were all having these little mental breakdowns, and I thought I was okay. I mean, I just knew I was doing good. I was like, okay, I have it. I'm strong. I'm being there for everyone else. And it wasn't until I had a complete utter breakdown at work. So where I could not stop crying. My body was shaking. They had to call a family member to come to the job to come get me. And it was at that point when I realized I'm not okay. I'm not okay. And so I share that story, and I'll say that's the most vulnerable story that I share with others, is because so often we wear this mask of I'm okay that we don't recognize how bad it is, because we just keep pushing and going because we have been taught generationally that strength looks like being okay. Strength looks like just stuffing your feelings down and moving forward. And so, in order for me to break that cycle, I had to do the work in recognizing that I was not okay and getting the help that I actually did need so that I could begin to heal. And so, grieving to heal allowed me to do that because I was grieving the loss of my nephew, which then later morphed into me grieving the loss of myself. And so, what does it look like to grieve the dead, but also grieve the living? And so, that's my most vulnerable story that I feel like most people can connect to, because we often, especially people of color, we have often been conditioned to believe that I'm okay is what strength look like, and actually it's not. Being vulnerable and being able to ask for help is what strength looks like.
I want to first start off and say I am so so sorry for your loss. But did that cause a struggle or multiple struggles in your faith, or did you still push and endure?
I would say I felt so for myself. I dove deeper into my faith. I dove deeper into my faith because all I could do was pray for some type of understanding. I didn't pray like why did this happen? I prayed more so on the sense of help me to be strong enough to understand that something good is going to come out of this. Something healing is going to come out of this. And so that's what my prayers were more. My prayers were more of give me the strength to continue to do good in this world, because right now I'm facing so much darkness, because I was really angry. I was really angry. I was feeling defeated as for a family who poured so much into their community for my nephew to be murdered the way he was. I couldn't make sense of it. And so, and then doing that, we founded a non-for-profit organization in his name called the Melquan Jatel Anderson Foundation, where we continue to pour resources in the community, whether it's educational resources, job training, scholarships. We make sure that we go from door to door and feed the elderly and the homebound. Well, even during the COVID time, we brought the COVID bus to the community so that those that were of age and those that were disabled and that were too afraid or more sustainable to getting COVID were able to just come downstairs, get tested, and go back up in their home, as opposed to having to go out to the doctor's office and things of that nature. So we utilize that experience and that trauma to prove that there's hope, to prove that there's still more good in the world. And so that's what I needed my faith for. I needed my faith so that I could continue to being a good person. Because in the darkness of that trauma, it was so easy to get filled with rage and anger and hate. And I couldn't allow myself to go in that direction.
Jumping back into, you said that you were angry. Were you angry at God, angry at the world, or just both?
I wasn't angry at God because here is something I always tell people. When something trying happens, people tend to say, God, why did you do this to me? But people also forget that the devil was once an angel as well. And so anything good that happens sometimes balances out with bad. And so just as there are horrible things that happen, I don't believe all those horrible things that happen is blamatory towards God. Just like I believe that when we are, and I say this all the time, you cannot praise the devil in the light and then cry to God in the dark. So during your challenging times, you have to glorify the Lord and whatever your most high is. And just because I say God doesn't mean that anyone else have to. I'm just saying whatever your most high is. Whoever your most high is, you praise them in the light and you praise them in the darkness. Whether it's challenging times, whether it's your happiest times, whether you on top of the world. Because I believe we are all one decision away from being in a bad place. We are all one meal away from starvation. We are one bad decision with our paychecks away from homelessness. There's so many different things that can happen in this world in a split second. And so you can't blame everything good on everything. You can't blame everything good on yourself and say, like, I made this happen. And then as soon as something bad, you say it's God's fault. And so I say that to say I wasn't angry at God. I was angry at the person. I was angry at at some point I was angry at the community because I felt like how could people let this happen? But in a sense, as everything went through, the community really came together, and that's how the perpetrator was caught. The perpetrator was caught through the community because the community came together, and the community held this perpetrator in the store when and till the police got there and they caught him. So he's in prison now. He's in prison now because the community band together. So I believe that good continues to happen when you continue to pour good out into the universe. So I was not angry with God. I was more so angry at the situation, and I was angry at the person who made the decision to take my nephew's life.
Yet again, I'm lost for words. Like, your intelligence and the way your mindset is just so, so beautiful. Um, my next question for you, and thank you for sharing that. Um, have you have you dealt with forgiveness, or are you still working on that for that specific individual who took his life? What steps are you taking to kind of navigate and work through that?
And so here's my deal with forgiveness. And this is what I preach, this is what I teach, and this is what I encourage. Forgiveness is for you. My forgiveness is not about forgiving him. My forgiveness is forgiving me for the things that I couldn't control. My forgiveness is forgiving me for the things that run through my mind in the sense of if I would have knew this, my shoulda, woulda, coulda is, if only we would have been here at this time. All the things that I have no control over, that's what my forgiveness is for. My forgiveness is for my anger and my healing. My forgiveness is for accepting that there are things that I have to work on within myself if I'm going to get right with the higher power that's above me. And so I don't give too much thought in about forgiving that person because I am still angry. There's no mistake and no doubt about that. However, I can only hope that that person gets the help that they need. So, should they ever be released, they don't so selfishly take the life of someone else because they felt like they didn't like them, or they felt like they was collateral damage, or they felt like, oh, this was just something that they were going to do today to prove a point to the idea of this is what masculinity looks like within the community. And so that stems from, and you mentioned this about my process. That process stems from me going within and understanding, okay, what am I going to do differently? And so what I'm going to do differently to make a difference in the community is I'm going to teach others about human behavior. I'm going to study it, and then I'm going to teach others about human behavior. So I'm currently doing my dissertation on the dangers of underrepresented communities in their exposure to trauma, the reshaping with masculine identity looks like for those exposed to chronic community violence. And the only way you can do that is if you have been in the trenches in that. And because I am from the trenches of that and I've been in the trenches of that, I feel comfortable enough about telling the stories and engaging with those individuals and making sure that their stories and their voices are heard, so that this is studied appropriately, so that support is happening within the community for real healing to happen. Because you cannot heal a community without dealing with the problem, and you can't deal with the problem without healing the community.
And I know I keep saying this, but I'm like literally like lost for words and just like in awe of how like insightful you are in your answers to all of these questions. And it really just shows like the mindset that you have and just representing your faith and everything. And it's just such a beautiful thing.
Thank you. I'm really happy, and I know I keep saying this too. I'm so happy to be here with Sean, because this is part of the work. Part of the work is having these discussions. Part of the work is being open to sharing parts of yourself, as well as receiving and answering questions that others may have. Often people have these opportunities and they miss the opportunity to share and engage and dig deeper because they're afraid. They're afraid to dig deep because what it looks like to expose themselves and expose the trauma, or even dig and sit in the silence. And part of my work, part of my process, and part of my work was sitting in the silence. Once I was able to sit in the silence and in the eye of the storm to actually process my feelings and my thoughts and my emotions, that quiet time, that quiet space, that quiet space is something else. But what I can tell you is when you sit and deal with the quiet, you are able to manage the noise, and you find solace in the quiet, because you are now distinguishing between busy noise and sound. You're distinguishing between busy noise and motivation, motivational and inspirational noise. Those are two different things. And so it's important for you to go through that process for yourself, so that you don't constantly find yourself surrounding you with busy noise, and you end up on this conveyor belt of trauma, and you find yourself trauma bonding with other people because you keep circulating busy noise.
Do you have a favorite Bible verse that you go by or that helps you with this part of your testimony?
Yes, I'm so happy because I read this every morning. And it's called the escape hatch. And it says, submit therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. James 4:7. Lord, we are grateful that you have made a way for us to flee the enemy and come to you. Thank you for every detail of your goodness to us. And the reason why I say that is one of my favorites is because during the darkest and the trying times, it is so easy for you to find blame in everyone else, that you think that every storm that comes to you is meant to destroy you. And sometimes the storm comes so that it can shake you loose of the things that are holding you back. And so when I think of when it says about submitting yourself to God and resisting the devil, is and fleeing, that the devil, that he will flee from you, I think about being in the storm, and the storm being shaking you, shaking loose all those things that are holding you down. Sometimes we get so comfortable, and not in the sense of comfortable, but we find comfort in trauma and noise when we're in dark spaces, because people tell us what we want to hear and not what we need to hear. But that storm will sometimes shake you to let go of those relationships that's not allowing you to become the best version of yourself. And so that's why that's one of my favorite Bible verses.
Can you explain for those who don't understand the difference between God giving you time and quietness versus thinking that God is ignoring you?
I would say that is for the individual. And the reason why that is for the individual is because God continuously gives us signs and messages. And it is up to us to be willing to hear the message and receive the message. So sometimes the silence is not in the sense of I'm ignoring you. Sometimes the silence is a sense of what I'm giving you is right before you. I need you to be still. I need you to be still so that you can process and see the movement and the things that are around you, so that you can know in which direction to work. And so that's why we have our peripheral vision, right? You're able to see on the side of you. You're going, when you're driving, if you're someone that's driving, when you're walking, you see on the side of you so that you're not bumping into different things, or you're not walking into others. You're going to only just look in front of you. Sometimes you have your sound, not sometimes, but you have your sound to know when someone's coming up from behind you. And so that doesn't mean that God is not listening to you. Sometimes he is putting you in a place for you to be able to see on your own the trueness of what is around you, because the lesson is there for you to be able to learn from, but you have to be willing to receive it. And so that is the difference between him not him. That's the difference between you receiving something and you allowing yourself to receive something. Because someone can say something to you to their blue in the face. That doesn't mean that you're gonna agree with them, and it doesn't mean that you're gonna listen to them. You're like, all right, I hear you, and then you move on. You know how you have your children, you say, don't touch that, that's hot. Don't touch it, that's hot. and they still want to put their hand on it just so they can see themselves. I believe that is in the same sense of God being there and saying, oh, you know what, I've given you all these signs and these tools and these lessons, but you're not willing to receive them. So sometimes I have to be quiet so that you can go through this process to see, and you'll come to me when you're ready. And that's why I say that it's up to the individual, because there's many times where the individual spends so much time fighting what is right in front of them, as opposed to receiving and hearing the message.
Because of our flesh thinks that avoiding peace or staying in fear is safer than surrendering. How do you feel about surrendering everything to God?
That's a process. I feel that that is a process. It is easier said than done. It's easy to say, surrender yourself and trust me. When I say it's easier said than done, I spoke about this earlier of how I was fighting so hard to be the old version of myself when there was already signs to let go. Like to put this, for example, when they told me that I couldn't come back to work, even though I was working remotely for 2 years because of COVID. Now we were going back into the building, and I had a team of 4 assistant deans up under myself. I wrote out a comprehensive plan of how I would be able to work remotely, and the other deans that were in the building will be able to be in person. So I would do all the administrative work, and I would be able to meet virtually with all the parents who couldn't come in the building for me. So there was a comprehensive plan. However, the principal at the time, she just wanted me in the building. So because of her preference of me being in the building, despite her knowing my limitations, despite her knowing the reasonable accommodation that I had, and despite her knowing my disability and my condition, her preference was for me to be in the building. So she fought for me to have to retire early and be phased out. And so again, that was me just constantly fighting and battling till I was making myself sick. To at a point I had to just say, you know what, I keep going into the hospital because my blood pressure is spiking. My blood pressure was like my blood pressure was, what was it, 197 over 136, and they were like, you're gonna have a stroke if you keep this up. And so I had to surrender. I had to just say, you know what, this is not worth my life. And the moment I did that, I started healing. I started finding peace. My headaches started going away. I started getting more strength. My appetite started coming back. There were so many different things that started coming back. So I shared that story to say that the lesson that God was telling me was, I have you. Let that go. Let that go. You have done all that you need to do in that capacity. I have something new for you. And that was my lesson in that moment, because once I let that go, immediately other doors started opening for me. Whether it was my spiritual healing, my mental healing and physical healing, as well as speaking opportunities and other things that started coming from that. It was this sense of, once I stopped fighting against what he had in store for me or what he was trying to give me, I was able to see where I needed to go. And that's the lesson that people have to learn. Sometimes you have to just stop. Sometimes you have to stop, breathe, and take a minute to recognize doors that were closed are not always meant to be reopened.
Did you ever feel any pressure to mask or overcompensate at work or in your personal life? What type of toll did that take on you physically, mentally, and spiritually?
Well, I would say definitely. As someone being a young Black female professional in the workforce, I often had to, and being from quote unquote the hood, I've often had to mask this idea of what we call code switching, right? There was one way I had to talk with my coworkers, there's another way I talk with the kids, there's another way I talk with parents, with the, like there was always this sense of code switching. I was often told, uh, oh, you're rough around the edges, and with which was considered, right, when meeting with certain people rough around the edges, that's their way of saying you're a little too hood or whatever. However, my being rough around the edges does not mean that I am incapable of doing my job. It does not mean that my competencies need to be challenged. And it doesn't mean that my expertise or my brilliance that I bring should be lessened because of someone else's perception of what rough around the edges mean. And so I speak about this in my anthology called The Courageous Pursuit of Authenticity, because my authentic self does not belong to everyone. That belongs to me, and that belongs to those who are close to me. My professional authentic self is what I bring when I clock in. That is what belongs to the job. My professionalism, my capabilities, and my expertise is what is what I give to the job. So when I'm meeting with leadership, or I'm meeting with anyone in the workplace, and when I'm meeting with other leaders, I coach them on, and I tell them, you cannot force people to share their personal, authentic self with you. So it's not considered masking. It is them being able to say, you are required or allowed to have this piece of me, because this is my professional self. I don't have to expose my personal things. And in this world right now, they have this thing where it's like, oh, everyone has to go out for drinks. Everyone has to. The workplace culture is supposed to be fun and welcoming. Well, fun and welcoming does not mean unprofessional, and that doesn't mean that my personal time has to be your time. And so when I think about masking, I think about the challenges that Black women face when they're in the workplace, where they have to be or overcompensate and do more than their counterparts in order to be seen as equal, or order to be accepted as someone who deserves a space at the leadership table. And that's something that we often experience. So, to your point and to your question, yes, there's times where I had to feel like I had to overcompensate because I had to overcompensate because of one, me being a woman when I was on a predominantly white leadership team, but then me being a woman of color and a young woman of color from the projects where I had people who were everyone else from the suburb and they were looking at me like, oh, you know, you must have faced so much adversity because you're from the urban area. So there was those battles that I've often found myself going back and forth again, but I've also found myself staying true to who I am and drawing clear boundaries of what I will allow people to be exposed to in the sense of my peace, my comfort, and my professionalism.
Thank you so much for that wonderful answer. I truly appreciate you being here today. Is there anything else that you want to discuss in particular that we didn't touch on, or do you have any questions for me?
I would like to know from you your thoughts on um, Black masculinity and as it is shaped and quote unquote the right now the design of what is the representation of when you're being exposed to a, a male with a disability as well as those who are navigating through the trenches of trauma.
I find it inaccessible and outdated. Lately, when I look at how people are viewing Black queer people and how we demonize it through lenses of white supremacy without even realizing that it holds us back way more than our culture is ready to discuss.
100% agree. That was such a good question. You were right on time. You were right on time with that, Sean. You were right on time with that.
Do you have any other questions for me?
No, I'm putting my social media handles in the chat so that I would love it if you would follow me on social media.
Of course.
Also, I would love it if you both would just email me a testimonial of your thoughts of this interview and just the interaction with me. If you don't mind, if you send me a photo, I would love to put it on my website. I like to have a photo and just a quick blog about different interviews I do and the interactions I have with the community as I continue to build up the visibility of our community and the work that we continue to do.
Of course. And thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. I really hope you enjoyed it just as much as I did. A big thank you to you for sharing your time and your insights. And if you don't mind, if our people want to connect with you or support you, would you mind sharing where they can find you?
Absolutely. They can find me on all social media platforms at RDB underscore speaks. I am on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, everything. And then also my website, which is www.rdbspeaks.com. Let's stay in touch. Let's continue to do this work. Sean, feel free to invite me back at any given time. I will always show up for you.
Thank you so much. You guys can find all of those links in the show notes. I'm Sean Gold, and this has been Crippled by Culture. Be sure to follow the show, leave a rating or a review if you loved it, and share it with someone who'd appreciate the message. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation with me. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you did too. I appreciate all of the beautiful, wonderful insights you have shared. Before we wrap it up, if people want to connect with you or support you, where can they find you at?
RDB speaks underscore on YouTube and at RDB underscore speaks on Instagram and LinkedIn.
Thank you so, so much. I'll make sure everything is linked in the description below. Once again, I'm Sean Gold. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe. And be sure to hit the bell so you're notified whenever new episodes of Crippled by Culture go live. I will see you guys next time.
Want to listen to Crippled by Culture on your favorite podcast platform? Well, now you can. Crippled by Culture is now available wherever you listen to podcasts. Just search up the show title and make sure you subscribe. Thank you for being a listener.